Welcome to the 10x Growth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Saradha Sriram, Business Technology Strategist. Today, we have with us Susan Nefzger, a leading international and US public relations writing, mentor, and marketing consultant. Welcome to our podcast, Susan.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you, Shraddha.
Absolutely. Susan, what was the catalyst that made you realize you needed to write this book about living fearlessly?
Well, as you know, I had already written a practical guide to awareness and its workbook, and I did these through a conscious writing workshop in Glastonbury, England. So I had gone through a particularly challenging period of my life, and I had a group of people from that workshop or from that conference in England that were all they're my circle of readers now still. And so some of them were encouraging me because I really do live fearlessly, and I always have, and they just encouraged me to write a book about what I had been through, what I was going through, and because after I wrote the books, my whole life changed completely, just completely. So the summer before the pandemic, I was inspired with the table of contents, the title. So I did all that, and then when the pretty much, and then my mother got very ill, and so then the pandemic hit, and I it was obviously perfect for writing a practical guide to living fearlessly because I live in Atlanta. And during that time, it was pretty crazy everywhere, but it was really crazy in Atlanta. And I understand my role, on the planet a lot of times is to anchor energy. And so I knew, well, I'm here to anchor, positive energy, but still it's very difficult. So anyway, during that time, especially when everything was shut down and people weren't going anywhere, I just made myself write the book. I just sat down and started writing it. And then, of course, the inspiration follows when you make the decision to write it.
Was there a specific moment in your life where fear was holding you back? And is that what shaped your approach?
No, because like I said, thankfully, I've never had to deal with that. So it's really not a part of why I wrote it. But what I do say, and I think this refers to another question you have, that in my epilogue, because during the time I was writing this book, my mom was very ill and she was dying. And so I was traveling to be with her and my family, and we were caring for her. And so and like everything, when you write a book, there's things that you say, why can I not finish it? Or, sometimes you get blocked. And I knew, because I've had the experience before, that things are your epilogue. Things that happen in your life can be your epilogue. They can be your introduction or whatever it is. So I realized, oh, this is going to be my epilogue. So I realized during the time that I was writing the book and as I was finishing the book, I realized that one of my because I'm not a person who's afraid of doing anything or of uncertainty, but one of the things I was afraid of was not having my parents. So and I didn't even realize that until I was going through it. So this is to the point of that everything in our lives play a role in how and it shapes our lives. Every choice we make, we may think things are going to happen a certain way, and we may make a different choice, and then that changes the trajectory of where you go and what you do. And hopefully, through the things that I write and through the practical guides, I help people understand what it is to be mindful, to step back and observe instead of just operating on your emotions and just reacting. And that's what it's all about. And that's what I help people do, because once you step back and observe, and you understand that you're not your personality, you're not your emotions, you can observe and you can say, okay, I'm just going to, see how this goes. And what will happen is focus. So then you focus. So then when you focus and you have concentration, then you have clarity, because then you allow things to come in that may not have come in when you're too busy, like rushing, controlling. I have to accomplish this plan that I think is what I'm supposed to be doing. But maybe it's really not. So anyway, I know that's a long answer to your question.
So I did see that, personally, your definition also kind of evolved through this process. Is there one common fear pattern you see people getting stuck, and that specifically that your book addresses?
Well, in the book, I go through and it's a short book because it's meant to be a pocket guide, really, because people today don't read anyway. I mean, well, I do because I'm a reader and I'm older and I grew up reading, and you probably do. And I read all the time. And because the one thing I do know but I've always been a reader and I've always been a writer. So the thing that we know is reading good writing makes you a better writer. So when I feel stuck in my writing, I read one of my favorite authors that I know is an unbelievable writer, and that's Ray Bradbury. And that's science fiction. It doesn't have anything to do with what I write, but it always inspires me to be a better writer. So, anyway, to your question, the thing I see all the time, and of course now in the world, we have to balance ourselves in our own lives, and we have to decide, how do we balance what we see every day in the news and everything else. And so what I see the most is the fear of uncertainty. So the fear of not knowing what's going to happen is it's an obvious one, right? But even with executives, even because, see, most people think they have a plan. This is how I'm going to accomplish what I think I need to do or what I want to do. And then things happen that change that, like the pandemic, like what's happening now in our democracy in the United States. Um, People have, and it's scary. I mean, it's scary for everybody. But what we have to do, and what the way that I have been really trying hard to balance that, is to just stay centered, do my breath work, and do my meditation. Because if I don't do those things every day, then you can get caught up in the outside world. And really what we have to do is we have to maintain our center and our groundedness, so that we can observe and we can come from the I am presence. Because you can look at yourself and say, okay, that's my human person that I'm inhabiting. I'm a spiritual being inhabiting a human body. And so it's hard for a lot of people to understand that. But I think today, like, you have to understand, I was motivated and inspired to write this book 10 years ago. So it's already been 10 years. And back then, people weren't really ready for that message. But today, people are really understanding that being mindful is the only way to live a really fulfilled and joyful life, because the joy comes from within. It doesn't come from the outside. So when I help people understand, first of all, presence, mindfulness allows for focus. So that can be in any situation. In business, when you practice mindfulness and you understand that you can observe and not react, you can respond later, but don't react, because whatever's happening with whoever you're dealing with, that's all, that's their energy. It's not yours. So you can just be you and you can respond in a professional way later. You don't have to react, because awareness allows people to focus. So when you're mindful and you're in a business situation, you have so much more increased focus, because you don't worry about everything else that's going on. You just do what you're driven to do, whether by passion or whether it's something that you have to do at work. And it's easy to become more mindful when you really know how to do it. And I know I say that, but it's just a matter of focusing on yourself and also doing breath work and also meditating. So,
Absolutely. They are very effective techniques, and you talk quite a bit about that in the book. I also liked how you went back to your previous works and tied it all together and what made you write the next in the series. I want to delve a little bit into like real world applications. What do you, apart from uncertainty,
mhm.
what do you think are the most paralyzing fears you encounter when working with people today? And what do you advise them? And how do they live with fear? Where do they even start?
So number one, we have to understand ourselves. So self awareness, right? So how do we do that? And how do we get to know ourselves? Because typically, all the generations are different. We know this. So typically, I grew up, with my parents as role models and everyone in my life, but it was totally different. Today's world is totally different for young people. So, but we all have role models. But to learn who you are, you have to understand, you have to go within. And so, how do we do that? We have to create space for stillness. So that is a challenge in today's world for a lot of people, because people think if I stay busy, if I keep busy, I'll just make it through the day. I'll make it through the day. I'll get done what I think I need to get done. And so I think that mindset is changing. I see that changing, but it's still hard for people, especially women, to focus on themselves and put themselves first. So in focusing on ourselves, what does that mean? Well, do what I do, and what I write in my first book, A Practical Guide to Awareness, is self care is number one. And so, what is self care? It's really putting yourself first by maintaining your needs. So, what do you like? What are your needs today? I need some peace and quiet, but you also have to communicate that. So, going within requires us to have the stillness. Even people who say, there's no way, I have 3 kids, I work 9 to 5, I need it, all the typical things, and it's a real thing. So you take 5 minutes, and this is what I say all the time. Take 5 minutes. Take whenever that is that you feel is the best time for you during the day. My time is the morning time. So you get a cup of coffee or whatever it is, chai latte at home, go outside. I always focus on grounding in nature. If you can't go outside, close your bedroom door, get comfortable and just relax. And if you can just relax for 5 minutes without any outside influence, not your phone, not your radio, not the TV, or any noise or music, and you just sit and you think about what is it that, who am I? What do I like? What do I love? What do I dislike? What am I doing? Why am I here? Because if you start asking yourself the question, you will get answers, because your soul knows. And that's the thing that I help people get to. And it's not difficult. It's just that it's like you say, where do people start? And people are busy. And what about people who have nothing? Right? What about people who, they and people can get stuck in patterns and low downturns in their lives. And so how do they get started? Take 5 minutes and do some deep breathing. And there's all kinds of breath work apps, people who teach breath work, um, all kinds of ways that you can do breath work. And what breath work does, as soon as you start doing it, I did it before this, I do it every day. I can't not do breath work. Because why? Because when you breathe and you breathe in, what are you doing? You're focusing on your breath, and you're not focusing on anything else, because you can't, because you're breathing. And you're breathing in holding it for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, letting it out. And there's all kinds of exercises. The 444, which is great for dealing with like immediate stress. Alternate nostril breathing is really good. So breath work is something everyone can do. Everybody can do it. And once you start doing it and you feel the benefits of it, you can do it several times during the day or once a day, or but once you start doing that, and then you feel the stillness, because the breathing regulates your body's fight or flight response, your relaxation response. So it really is something that seems simple, but it changes your whole body and how your body responds. So that's the thing that I would say for people who don't know where to start. Take 5 minutes. If you can take 15 minutes, that would be great. But I know people might think that's too long. So take 15 minutes in the morning at your lunch break at work. Close your door, turn off your phone, do some deep breathing, and just focus on the breath. So once you do that, you'll understand what I mean. And I think people are very aware of breath work now and how it benefits, but there you can't, once you start doing it, you can't live without it. You can use it in any situation. You can be driving your car. You can be going into a presentation and you're nervous. And I was like, because I drank too much coffee today. So I was doing breath work because I was like, come on. I sometimes I do that. The caffeine will, if I have more than 2 cups. So that's what I would recommend. And I can definitely expand on that, obviously. But I think that that's a very practical way to start.
I love it. What surprised you most while researching and writing this book?
The thing that surprised me was when I figured out, or was led to understand, that my biggest fear was losing my mother, her dying. That was my greatest fear. I think that's how I say it in the book, in the epilogue. My final fear was her leaving, and then I was with her. So
I lost my dad a couple years ago, and I could relate to a lot of things that you said. I was there with him towards the end, and
it's such a
just,
blessing. It's
yes, it
such an
is.
amazing thing, and people, and that's the other thing. So I'm writing my next book. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because today's her birthday.
Happy
Sorry.
birthday to her.
And I never really think about her birthday. I think about her passing. But anyway, in my new book, I'm writing about love and relationships, a practical guide to love and relationships. And um, it's not just coupling. It's about all relationships. I focus a lot on coupling because clearly people, and I've talked to people who want that information, but so that was the thing that I found out. Um, that was the biggest surprise for me in writing a practical guide to living fearlessly, because there's things that we can't know everything. When you write a book, it's not because you know everything, it's because you want to share things with people so their life can be easier and they can live their life more fully. And when I went through the transformation of writing a practical guide to awareness, I downloaded the whole book in the gardens of Glastonbury Abbey. I mean, who, like, that you couldn't have told me that was going to happen. I went to this retreat. I had no expectations because purposely I didn't have any. I didn't know what was going to happen. It would certainly wasn't what happened. But see, that was, it was my time to do that. And just writing that book was so easy because it was all a download, so I couldn't stop writing until I was done writing. And so that was an amazing experience. And then it just all became clear that conscious living alleviates all the things that we create for ourselves as hardships.
So, has your writing and message evolved across your different books?
I would say, I would say I'm a better writer. So how that's evolved, and I write all the time because I help people write. And I write, a lot of business things, but I also write, essays and things like that. So I think I'm a better writer, but the message is always in order to be lead a more fulfilling life, because there's a lot of people who, and people I work with, who they've done it all. They're married, they have a family, they've had a successful career, they've done amazing volunteer things, all kinds of things. And they still want to know what's missing, because that's exactly how I felt when I went to this retreat, and I knew I'd wanted to write a book my whole life. I had always been doing that, but I never put any focus on it. And I went to that retreat and it happened. But my point is that when you ask yourself the question, what am I missing, or what's missing in my life? Because sure, you might be happy, but are you fulfilled in yourself as a human being and knowing what your purpose is? And people argue about that whole idea of having a purpose. Um, your purpose is you're here and you're alive, and every person has a gift to share, every person, and it's a unique gift. And this is what I learned writing this book, but it's what you learn when you work with people and you deal with people and you try to help people. You learn so much, and so it's such a universal gift, because once you're in that moment with people like we are right now and we're sharing, what happens when you're mindful and you're present, and I teach this in my coaching, especially for business purposes. Once you're present in that moment and you're really giving that person all your attention, and you're not on your phone, or you're not worrying about your deadline, it makes everything richer. It and then the other person feels it and you feel it and you love it. It's the greatest gift you can give another person, is to be completely present in the moment with them, especially with your kids, especially with your spouse or whoever it is, or whoever, because they know that and they feel it, but it makes everything so much richer. Then you get hooked on it. So then once you're present in the moment, and it's not easy, and I've been practicing this a long time, and I practice daily. Sometimes I'm not always present. And I had a conversation the other day with someone, a really good friend, and they were going on a trip, and they weren't really present, and they were thinking about all the things they had to do. And they mentioned it, and I said, "Oh, so you're not present right now as we're talking?" Because I was really present, but maybe it's easier for me. I'm not sure. And then they realized they weren't. And I said, "Well, is that helping you worry and make this mental list? Is that helping you do that right now?" So they were just completely, and they know me and they hear this all the time, and they were just completely just surprised by the whole thing. And see, that's what happens. It's just a habit. So we can make a habit of being mindful. And so back to the practicality of my books, there's so many ways that I do it. So I walk every day in nature, and I'm also a photographer as a hobby. So, and that's something that helps me be present and share beauty with others. But also, I describe my surroundings to myself. And so you can do it at work, or you can do it where in the car. So if you're driving and you're in traffic, you can say, the sky is blue, that car is red, my shirt is green. And it brings you right back. And it sounds silly, but it brings you right back to the moment, and you say, okay, I have to focus on driving the car because I don't want to get in an accident. And the same thing goes with, like, on my walk. I can, because I walk for a long time, and so I can, get a little spaced out, so I say the road is black, the tree is green. So everybody can do that, and everyone can do breath work, and everyone can just take 5 minutes and be still and come back to yourself, feel how you're feeling, figure out what it is you need in that moment. And if you can act on it, do it, because that's the way to live consciously. And then also, it takes away stress, because, like, let's say you are in traffic. Well, there's not really much you can do about it, is there? Right? So it doesn't do any good to get upset about it. So you can do some deep breathing in the car. And I mean, I live in Atlanta, so I get it. And so if you practice conscious living, because that's really what this is, whether you call it conscious writing or conscious living, when you're conscious and you're in charge of you, and you know that you can rely on yourself, and that's a form of resilience that I say all the time. My faith is my resilience, because I know I can depend on myself, because I've been through a lot of things in my life, but everybody has. So I think I make it sound easy. Well, the hard part for people in today's world is because of the technology we have at our disposal, because of our jobs, because people work really hard, and they work all the time, and people work 24/7. So finding that work-life balance is really important. And that was a really important thing for me too. When I wrote the book, I was working with, in healthcare as a consultant. And then I went to working with nonprofits, because I felt like I just wanted to work with people that helped other people. So, and I was helping authors too. So that changes, and that goes back and forth. But I still really feel that I want to be focused on the mission of whoever I'm working with, that I really believe in that. So everyone has their choice of how they live consciously. You buy fair trade or organic food or whatever it is. So I know I went long.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Susan. We're truly thrilled to have you on our platform.
Thank you for
Some
having me.
Yeah, something that matters deeply to us here is living a life and leading a career filled with purpose. And hearing how you discovered and pursued your own purpose has been absolutely inspiring. It has been a real pleasure chatting with you, and we know our listeners are going to take so much away from this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.